Hello and welcome to another video on YouTube channel of tutorialspedia.com. In this video, I'm going to cover a very interesting topic about enterprise application integration, and I will be covering that what are the important considerations that you should keep in mind when you are implementing your integration solutions, where you are having a design and development of your applications to integrate a heterogeneous set of systems and applications in your organization. All the considerations and the points that are being made part of this video tutorial are based on my personal experience, and I assume that we will have a similar set of integration strategies. But of course, in different integration environments and different organizations, there can be some additional scenarios or additional use cases for which the considerations might slightly differ. But this video should give you a good jump start and at a high level in understanding that what are the key things that you must consider when you are going to plan for an integration strategy in your organization. So what we are going to cover in this video, we will be looking at the decision making process for integration solutions implementation, starting from the selection of the tool till the implementation, design, development, deployment, testing phases. All right. So the first thing that you have to do whenever you are going to have integration projects in your organization is to choose the right tools and technologies. Because whatever kind of integration projects you have, the core thing that you must keep in your mind is that the selection of tools that you are going to use and your design and development team is going to use, as well as the tools and technologies that are going to be used by your operations, DevOps teams, by your testing teams and all other teams, that plays a very important role. So if we talk about the tools and technologies available in the market, so you have plenty of options. Either you will go for some of the open source technologies or you will go with some of the proprietary or closed source technologies. And there are plenty of options available in either case. And if we talk about some of the major ESBs or integration platforms that are available in the market, we can name a few here, although the list might go long. As of now, some of the major technologies or ESP products that are available in the market include TIBCO, BusinessWorks, MuleSoft, Software AG's Web Method, WSO2 products for integration as well as API management, and IBM integration platform, as well as there are various other platforms also available. So I'm not naming all of them, but just giving you an example that what are the kind of technologies that you will be considering. And if we talk about the integration technologies and available options, the first thing that you will do is that you will do the identification based on your constraints and limitations if you have any. For example, the technologies and tools and the vendors that I was just mentioning, not all of them have the same pricing models, not all of them will have the same cost associated with the support model. So every product or every technology that you choose from the closed source, even in case of open source, if you are buying the subscription for the support model of some of the technologies, the pricing might differ. So definitely the budget that you have for your organization to set up all of your integration portfolio and to set up your integration layer, that plays a very important role here. So depending on your budget, you can drill down and you can choose and you can negotiate with different vendors and then select one of the options which just suits to your budgetary requirements. And budget is not the only constraint. Skills is a very important point that you should consider here. For example, if in your organization you already have available resources with certain technologies, skill set readily available, or if you have some options to get trained, or you have some of the resources who already have some background in the integration areas, then that can be a plus point for your organization, and that way you can minimize the constraints related to the skills. Because eventually, no matter which technology or which tools you are going to select, you will have to make sure that your organization and your teams have enough capabilities and they have enough skill sets not only to do the implementation but also to do provide the support, to provide the bug fixing, operational maintenance, and even the migrations from one version to another, as well as different other associated uh, issues that might come across. So skills is another important constraint, and its potential opportunity as well. And then you might have some technological limitations. And from technological limitations, I mean that maybe in your organization, you have some specific use cases or specific requirements which are met by some specific vendor, but another vendor might not have the support to that level. As an example, let's suppose that you have some regulatory requirements due to which you cannot have any of the components of your integration platform to be on the cloud. So if you want everything on premise, then you will have to make sure that API management platforms as well as integration platforms that are provided or offered by different vendors, they have this capability to have everything on premise. Then you can have some other additional drill down of your limitation. For example, maybe you want a hybrid model with the on-premise as well as the cloud-based subscription, or maybe you have some other requirements that you want everything wholly on the cloud. And other than this limitation, may be specific to some technologies, you might have limitations. As an example, most of the tools and most of the vendors, they have support for the Java, and most of their products are based on the Java. So if you don't have resources which are good enough in Java or maybe in some other technologies, then you might think in that perspective as well. Because ideally, no matter these tools are drag and drop tools, and they provide you quite convenient method of doing the implementations in the fourth generation languages where you don't have to write the code, but still you might face the consequences and you might face the problems if you don't have technology, you don't have the teams which are equipped with the necessary implementation level or code level understanding. So these are just a few examples. You can have other technological limitations as well. Maybe you want to use some protocols which is not supported by a specific vendor or a specific ESP product, or maybe you want to use some additional software or additional components which needs to be integrated with your ESP, but that support is not available. So these are just a few examples, but in your case, there might be some other cases as well which you need to consider as technical limitations. So once you have identified all of the constraints and limitations, then what you will do is that you will go with the comparison. So you will be comparing all of the available options which are in the market, including the open source as well as closed source. So you will first, of course, check into the cost metrics at what are the available costs. And if you don't have budgetary constraints, then you will directly jump into the feature richness of all of the products. Different ESP products have different set of features, although the majority of them are almost all of them. If we talk about the core concepts or core fundamental use cases, they are, all of them are covering those, and they are quite rich in their features, and they are constantly evolving as well. But depending on your use cases, depending on your requirements, or depending on your own goals of your organization, you might have some other criteria to identify the richness of the features. So you will make sure that the product or the vendor that you are selecting is offering you a product which is quite rich in its features, including the toolings that are available, how it is convenient and how feasible it is for the development, how good it is for the testing scenarios, how good it is for the design of, and deployment scenarios, and also what are the components that it is providing, and how good it is in terms of support for the latest technologies, latest protocols, messaging models, and data formats. So a lot of things can go inside this feature richness category, and depending on that, you can make a comparison of all of the available options. You can maybe go for some of proof of concept POC type of projects on different vendors. You can have calls with these vendors and have demonstrations of the real time scenarios to get a better know how these products are equipped with the required features. Then there is another important thing when we are doing the comparison, which is the support model. So what kind of support is available from these different vendors, that also plays a very important role, because eventually these vendors, they are the, the major stakeholders to whom you will be coordinating in case of any bugs, in case of any issues, or in case of any technical support that you need, because they are the guys who own the code, they are the guys who own the product. You are just having a license to use that product. So support model is very important, what kind of support they are providing, how quick they are, and how vigilant and efficient their teams are in supporting. That's very important, because if you fall into this pitfall of selecting a product which for which you don't have a good support, then you might have severe consequences. But let me assure you, with my experience with different vendors and different ESP products, I can say that all of them, not all of them, but those with whom I have coordinated or contacted for different type of supports, they are quite efficient. And most of these big names like TIPCO, MuleSoft, IBM, etc. So what they do is that they have very good teams and very good brands in their support teams. They train them, they equip them with the necessary knowledge. They are up to date, and most of the times you will not face problem in getting a solution to any of the problems. And many of the times, if you come across a problem which is a real bug in the application, then they provide you hot fixes and updates to the product as well. Not only that, they continuously provide you security updates or advisories, and that also helps you a lot to make sure that the application and the integration area and integration hierarchy that you have is equipped with the latest changes and latest security updates and latest features. Then another important point that is important for many of the people and many of the organization is the community support, because I personally prefer a product or an ESB for which we have enough content available, not only on the official documentation but also at the community level. So most of these products have their own communities where people can ask questions, people can share their views, and they can discuss things related to the product, related to the technologies. And this is a very important thing, because a product which is living in silo and doesn't have any community, a good community, then you might not be in a position to better understand and better judge the technical aspects of that technology. But if it has a good community, then you can always go to the community section and discuss things, get ideas of things, and share your views and get others' views as well. And then the market. Why I mention market is that whatever technology you choose, whatever ESP product you choose, if it's quite popular in the market, then you have multiple benefits out of it. The first benefit is that it is tried and tested, because big companies and with the critical business models like banks, like telecom sector, or in any other sector, if companies are using that particular ESB, that means that this ESB product is tried and tested, and it is having a confidence of majority of the businesses in the industry or in the market. So that gives you another level of confidence that the ESP product that you are choosing is quite popular and well known. And another good thing is that if it is good in the market and it has a good penetration in the market, that means that if you have to find the resources, means if you have to find people who are skilled into that technology, that will be easier as well. Because a product, if it gets good penetration in the market, automatically it gets a good number of people who are equipped with the experience and knowledge of that product, and that gives you a good convenient decision making power to choose that product. So the next thing that you will do once you have shortlisted or identified the ESP product that you are going to use in your integration layer for your organization, then you will choose on available connectors, plugins, modules, or adapters. So most of these ESP products which are in the market, the popular ones, they provide you ready to use connectors to connect to different applications or plugins or modules or even adapters. So they make your life easier. For example, let's suppose you have to integrate with the CRM systems. Maybe you have to integrate with some EBS system, You have to integrate with some other third-party systems, like you have to integrate with Salesforce, you have to integrate with Siebel, you have to integrate with some other, maybe some telecom system like billing systems, just an example. So the good thing is that these products, these ESP products provide you ready to use connectors. So that makes the life easier. Instead of reinventing the wheel, you can just simply utilize those connectors or those plugins or modules. The naming might be different for different products, different ESP products, but eventually they serve the same purpose. So why this is important, that once you have shortlisted your ESP product, then the next thing will be that you have to shortlist what are the candidate connectors or plugins or modules that you can use out of that product. So that will give you a good high level understanding of the required components that you are going to plug and play in order to perform the required integrations. Then you have to check for any augmented or additional technologies which are required. So normally when you are using your integration layer and you're selecting some of the ESP product, you always, not always, but most of the times you make sure that you have API management support also available. So what happens is that in some of the ESP cases, API management is built in, so it is provided together with the integration bus. So that gives you an additional advantage, and you can use API management layer as well, which consists of API gateways as well as developer portal, your publisher portal, and analytics and monetization platforms. And it depends. There are, and then you can use that API management platform to enforce policies and to perform onboarding of your clients, and various other options are available in those API management platforms. And then you can also choose what kind of messaging technologies are supported by the ESP that you have selected, and how it is supporting addition or embedding of additional technologies related to the messaging. For example, maybe for event streaming or event processing, you want to use Kafka, or maybe you want to use RabbitMQ, ActiveMQ, or you want to use typical Java, JMS. So these are just a few examples, or maybe you want to use Solus PubSub. So for all these, you will always look into your ESP product and check whether you have support for adding or utilizing these technologies or not. So in most of the cases, you will see that they will be providing you connectors for these, and even if not, you will have to identify how they can support using these technologies. So it's very important that all of this is supported by the ESP product or ESP vendor that you are selecting. Then another important thing when choosing the right tools and technologies is the customization support and level of customizations which are needed. So this means that in most of the cases, these ESB products provide you a bunch of palettes or bunch of connectors or modules which are equipped with all of the required features. For example, if you have to integrate with database, let's suppose you want to integrate with Oracle database, or maybe with SQL, or maybe some NoSQL database, it provides you activities, a palette module operations or functions. The naming might differ for different ESPs, and those serve the purpose. But there can be cases where you want to write your custom Java code, you want to do some customization, or there are some features which are not supported in those readily available connectors or modules, and in those cases you want your own custom code to be integrated with these available functions in the ESP product. So to what level this customization is supported, that's very important, because you want to make sure that there should not be any limitation for you to do your work even if some of the connectors are not available. Another case can be that maybe some of the plugins or some of the connectors are available, but they are not free of cost, but you can save the cost by writing your own custom code, as an example. So in this case, you will prefer that you choose a product which does provide you support of your custom code as well. Maybe you can write custom plugins as well, custom adapters. So these things, if supported, that makes an additional weightage to the selection of that particular ESP for your requirements. So these are just a few of the options, a few of the considerations that you will think when you are selecting the right ESP product. But of course, It's not a complete list. There can be plenty of other options. A checklist can vary for different organizations or different use cases, and based on that, you might be selecting some ESP product. All right. So the next thing that we want to discuss is that once you have selected your ESP product, another important thing is to choose the implementation approach. This is a very vast topic. Of course, I cannot cover the entire one in this short video, but I will be just highlighting a few of the important points. The first thing is that you will choose what kind of design patterns you are going to use. There are plenty of integration and messaging design patterns. You can read on the internet about these available patterns. So if you are going to do the implementation for a specific project, are you going to follow some design patterns? Design patterns make the life easier for you. They provide you a blueprint, and then you follow that blueprint, and then you implement your integration layer. So what kind of design pattern you are going to use for messaging? Either you are going to use pub sub mechanism, you are going to use point to point integration. Similarly, are you going to do any kind of aggregation design patterns? Are you going to use any type of correlation related design patterns? Design patterns can vary depending on your requirements and depending on your use cases. So different design patterns are available, and you can just choose that which design patterns are the right candidates for selection of your while implementing your integration layer. Then few other points which are coinciding with this design pattern thing is that what kind of approach are you going to use? A very popular approach for the integration is API-led connectivity or API first approach, which is also known as top-down approach. And are you going to use top-down approach, or are you going to use bottom-up approach? And that's another important decision that you have to make. If you go for top down approach, that means it's contract first approach, where you first design the contract or a blueprint of your services or your APIs, and then you do get the feedback from the client or from the parties that are associated with the integration, and then you proceed with the bottom implementation. And then there can be another approach, which is a bottom up approach, which is design first approach, where you first do the actual you have some of the classes or some of the processes or some of the services which are already designed, and then you expose them as the services or the APIs. So depending on your use cases, you might choose API led connectivity with top down approach, which is most preferred approach, or you can go with a bottom up approach, maybe because you have some of the legacy systems which you want to use, and then you want bottom up approach. So what kind of approach you are going to use, that's something you will be designing when you are before you start the implementation. Then you might decide whether you are going to have a synchronous or asynchronous mode of communication between different systems and applications. So when we talk about asynchronous or synchronous mode of communication, the decision is not solely at your discretion. It can be a limitation on the other system as well to which you want to integrate. Maybe you want to integrate with a system which does not support synchronous mode of communication, or maybe you are integrating with another system which is only supporting synchronous communication. So depending on that, and depending on your use cases, depending on your requirements, whether you want real-time data, or you want it to be batch processed, or you want it in a way that you can afford the delayed response, or you can have a model where both hybrid approach of synchronous and asynchronous approach can be used. So all that can be decided according to your use cases. Then another important thing is that what kind of transport protocols you are going to use. This is another important thing which decides what kind of technologies you use, or what kind of additional technologies you want to use. For example, maybe you want all of your integration layer to be with maybe on HTTP or HTTPS, where everything will be in the form of APIs or HTTP based communication. Or maybe you want JMS based communication on the TCP level. Maybe you are using TIBCO EMS, maybe you are using JMS, maybe you are using Solus PubSub, or maybe you are using some other MQ systems, maybe IBM MQ, or maybe Rabbit MQ or Active MQ. So all this depends on what kind of transport protocols you want to use, and what are the technologies, and what are the additional systems that you use. Again, it depends on the systems that you are using. If a particular system is supporting multiple transport protocols, then you have the leverage to choose the right transport protocol. But if a particular system is only supporting a handful of protocols, then your choice is limited to those protocols only. Another thing that you will be considering is that what are the security measures that you are going to take, because security is always very important when you are doing the integration, because all of the inbound and outbound traffic is going in and out through your integration layer. So security plays a very important role to make sure that all of the backend systems and all of the integrated systems are safe and secure, and there is no breach of data, and there is no other security hazards or security threats to overall system and the business that you are supporting through the integration layer. When we talk about security considerations, maybe you want to have additional security at the transport level. For example, maybe you want to involve a two-way SSL, which is also known as mutual SSL. Maybe you want just one-way SSL, or if you want, if you talk about at the data level, maybe you want a certain level of encryption or obfuscation of the data. You want to have all of the communication through some secure mechanism. So additional to this, maybe if you are using API management on top of your services, then you might have certain API management level security policies, like you might have throttling implemented to throttle the request to avoid any DDoS attacks, or maybe you want to have burst control, or maybe you want to use IP blacklisting and whitelisting based mechanism. And then on the authentication level and authorization level as well, you can have security policies, like you want to use all of your APIs secured with the JWT or OAuth based authentication, or maybe you want some other type of additional security measures at the API level as well as at the backend level. So it provide these integration platforms provide you tons of options to secure your services and APIs, and you might choose out of the available options as per your requirements. Another point which I did not mention here is about data formats. Whether you want data to be transferred in some specific format, like in JSON format, in XML format, in the plain text format, in CSV format, or what kind of format you want to use, that's also important. And how you're going to do the transformations of those formats, because different systems might be accepting or expecting data in different formats. So all this is very important, that what kind of mechanisms you are going to use for these type of transformations, data translations, and data consistency, and how you're going to make sure that validation of data is done for all of the data that is flowing through the integration layer. And last but not least, another point that I mentioned here is project modularity. This is also important when you are implementing the integration layer, that how you are going to modularize your project and how you are going to structure it and what kind of hierarchy you are going to set up, because you want to make sure that you are enforcing SOA principles, and you want to make sure that you are reusing different modules that can be reused. So if we talk about these integration platforms or ESB models, they do provide you functionalities that can help you to do a proper modularity of your project, and to reuse the shared modules or shared constructs or shared components. For example, if you talk about TIPCO, Active Metric, Business Works, you can create shared modules, and then those can be shared. So that reusable or common code or common artifacts can be in a shared module. So modularity of your project is important, because it not only helps you to reuse the code, but also helps you to properly structure and organize your code. All right. So the next thing that I want to discuss is about the best practices, testing plans, deployment methodologies for your integration layers. So the best practice, when we talk about the best practices, there are two types of best practices that must be considered. One is specific to ESB product, for example, MuleSoft, TIPCO, or IBM integration platform, or WSO2, or Software AG, or any other vendor, or any other integration platform or ESB platform has its own best practices, and you can find those in their official documentations as well. So it makes sure that you are following those best practices, because those best practices have been shared by these product owners based on their own rigorous set of experiments and based on the feedback from different customers. So those best practices must be followed in order to better utilize these ESP products. But other than that, your organization might have your own best practices documents or standards that you want to follow. So those also need to be followed, and you might have some specific templates that you want to follow for all of your integration projects. So using the template based approach can help you to ensure that all of the projects or all of the team members within a project team are following the same set of standards and same approach when it comes to the design and development of your integration layer. And if you're following certain best practices for specific to your organization, then from regulatory point of view as well as from auditing point of view or from the internal standards point of view as well, you are at a secure side because you are all of your integration layers are following the same standards. That helps you in your migrations in the future as well as in onboarding the new employees as well, because if all of the projects and all of the solutions in the integration layer in your organization are following the same best practices, that makes quite easier for anyone to understand the flow of the code and the flow of the integration services that are in place in organization. Then use of any additional tools and services, that's also important, that for your best practices as well as for the testing and the deployment, are you going to use any additional tools and services other than those which are provided readily by these ESP products, maybe for your unit testing, or maybe for the testing of for the unit testing as well as for the integration testing, or maybe for doing that validation and code level assessments, you want to use some other third party tools. So our services, so that is also very important, that what kind of services or tools that you are going to use. So it's always recommended that you do proper understand you have a proper understanding of all of the available options for this type of additional tools that are available in the market, because it's not the end of the world that if you're choosing or if you're using some specific ESP product, then you should not use any other products or any other tools and technologies. Of course, you should augment and you should add value to your available pool of integration layer, and anything new or anything which is innovative and which can help you to do better in your organization for your integration area, you should consider that. And for unit testing as well as integration stress testing, you should decide what are the strategies that you are going to use. Are you going to use any mock systems, or what kind of tooling you are going to use? For example, if we talk about unit testing in TIBCO or MuleSoft, they do provide you features and they have inbuilt options to do the unit testing. Like in case of MuleSoft, you have MUnit, and using that you can do a very good unit testing. Similarly, in case of TIBCO as well, in TIBCO BusinessWorks, in Business Studio for BusinessWorks 6, you can use unit testing features which are available, and that helps a lot in identifying the problems that are associated with your code, and you test it properly before it moves to the other layers or other environments from your development to your test, pre-production or production environments. And then deployment options also needs to be considered. Either you are going to use some automated deployment with CI/CD pipelines, or the tools that you're choosing, if they are providing you some graphical user interfaces, like in case of TIBCO as well as MuleSoft and other cases, they do provide you web-based options to do all of the deployments, and that helps you to manage all of the life cycle of your applications through the user interface in a graphical manner, and that's very convenient option. But you should also see that options of scripted deployments, because you should not rely on a single mode of deployment options, as in case of a failure of one of the options, you should have all of the options available. You should be able to do scripted deployments, you should be able to do it from the UI as well as if you are having a CI/CD pipeline. So these are few other things that I wanted to mention here for your integration projects. But of course, these are not the only points. There can be plenty of other points as well that you should think and you should consider. So that's it for this video. I wanted to keep it short and cover some of the major points. But of course, the integration world is not small, and it is constantly evolving world, and new methodologies, new components inside the ESP products, new design patterns, and new approaches are coming in. So you need to keep yourself updated with all of these and make sure that you are using the best approaches, best possible approaches with the best possible options which are available in the market. So if you want to learn more, you can always go to my website tutorialspedia.com, where I have plenty of other tutorials related to the integration technologies. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you are notified for any new videos in future. Thank you very much.